is Cathy Kinter. I am a core knowledge coordinator at Thomas Jefferson in Forest City. We have been teaching core knowledge in our school for this is our 6th year. And while we are not experts on it, it's so vast, I don't know that you truly ever become an expert at it. We have had great success at our school, so they just kind of asked me to come and share some of the things that we are doing to ensure the fidelity of our implementation. For those of us who don't know, Sir, do you teach core knowledge at your school? Are you with this group here?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so for you who are not familiar with core knowledge, core knowledge was created by E.D. Hirsch. His book, Cultural Literacy, that came out in the 80s, recognized that our kids did not know a lot of the information that they needed to know in order to be successful to have true reading comprehension. So in his book, in Cultural Literacy, they did a long longitudinal study to see what kinds of questions were asked on particular PSATs, SATs, and high-stakes tests. And they looked at the information that came from the test about, Thomas Jefferson, and there was the Gettysburg Address on there, and he realized that kids did not know this information anymore, that we were not teaching it in the schools. So it is an educational reform movement that is a really, really powerful idea. It believes, E.D. Hirsch has promoted this program, that if content knowledge and background knowledge is absolutely essential to reading comprehension. You do not have true understanding of what you're reading if you are bringing a blank slate to the table when you're sitting down with that text. So that background knowledge is essential to understanding. He believes that regardless of who you are, what your parents do, the amount of money that your parents make, your socioeconomic background, your race, whatever, that everybody should have access to this information that makes us culturally literate. It is research-based. They call it the 4 C's of core knowledge. It is very content-specific. Everything that you do with core knowledge is steeped in content. If you are practicing on the 3rd grade level, if you're practicing for the kids to get ready for the EOG here in North Carolina, you're doing it through content, because again, that content is building that background knowledge, so therefore you're getting at that true comprehension. It's coherent. It's cumulative. It has a spiral to it. In kindergarten, they begin with Native Americans. They study Native Americans. That's expanded upon in 1st grade. In 2nd grade, when we teach westward expansion, we talk about the displacement of Native Americans as the country moved west. In 5th grade, they come back to Native Americans in 4th grade, when they talk about the American Revolution, they come back to Native Americans. In 5th grade, when they go into the Civil War, they come back to Native Americans. So you start out with a very, very small base of knowledge, and as the kids move up through the grades, that base of knowledge is expanded upon, so it spirals through the curriculum. It is very context-rich with cross-curricular connections. No longer are we teaching science here, and then, okay, put away your science books, now we're moving to social studies, put away your social studies books, now we're moving to reading. It is very, very cross-curricular related. What we are doing in our classroom, when I take my kids to art, they're doing that in art. So they're working on the same content in art. I'm a former 2nd grade teacher, so when we were teaching the War of 1812, and I took my kids to music, the music teacher would be talking about Francis Scott Key and talking about the creation of the Star-Spangled Banner. So it creates these cross-curricular connections. It provides educational excellence and equity for all students. Again, like I said, regardless of where you came from, regardless of the education of your parents, because you're giving this same information to all the children and you're giving them this rich background knowledge, it doesn't matter what you already know. It believes that this information is so important that it's giving it to all the students. It narrows the equity gap. Okay, not only the gap between American students, we know we have that gap between between race and between boys and girls, and then you have your 4th grade slump, but it narrows that gap because you're giving them that content knowledge again. It also narrows the excellence gap. Not only the gap between American students, but the gap between American students and students in other countries. Okay, why core knowledge? The core knowledge curriculum is very rigorous. It is, there are so many times when we hear that you have to beef it up. I've been teaching now for 23 years, and there are times that I feel like when I was given a curriculum, it was like, what can I do to enrich it? And this curriculum is very rigorous. It has a very, very high level of rigor in it. It provides common instructional focus. All right, your instructional focus is if you have, do y'all have a large transient population of kids? Do you have kids coming and going? Okay. We don't have a necessarily large transient population, but we find when kids come in and they're coming in from a non-core knowledge school, they really struggle because we're trying to get them caught up. They come in 3rd grade. Not only are you worried about, just the normal Common Core, but you're trying to fill in all of that background knowledge. So when I'm talking about the Vikings, I'm not only worried on the 3rd grade curriculum of the Vikings, but I'm also thinking about I have to go back and I have to hit all of that prerequisite knowledge that they missed from kindergarten up through 3rd. So with core knowledge, it provides that common instructional focus. So that if you have more schools in one district teaching core knowledge, regardless of whose room they're in, that if you have a 2nd grader coming from a core knowledge school, they're going to have the content that they need when they come to your school. It decreases learning gaps caused by student mobility for that reason exactly that we just spoke about. It enhances shared planning among teachers and schools. We have seen, since we have implemented core knowledge with Fidelity, that our teams have really come together. They have to, because we have to make sure gone are the days where, the parent comes in and says, I want this kindergarten teacher, or I want this 4th grade teacher. Because now what we're trying to promote is, regardless of where your child is going to get the same education all across the grade level and all throughout the school. So teachers plan together. They create units together. We've sat down and we've created these domain maps together, which basically, is kind of like where you come up with your broad idea and you create your vocabulary and things like that. So within the school, the grade levels and the school level, there is a huge bond that has been created with this core knowledge. We're bringing in the art teacher, we're bringing in the music teacher, we're bringing in our PE teacher, our computer teacher, our library teacher. So everybody within the school is coming together with a shared vision. It provides a strong foundation of knowledge for not only now, but later on down the road. I don't know the sessions that y'all have been to, but after every session we have been to, it has been one of those, this is core knowledge. This is core knowledge. Core knowledge is right on, it's spot on with all of these strategies and all of these important things that they were talking about. Even with the man from Hillsdale College when he was talking about the grammar, and this is exactly what core knowledge preaches as well. So not only are you looking at your little babies for 180 days and you're making sure that they have what they need, but that implementing this program with Fidelity, you're giving them what they need for high school, and better yet, to be active and productive citizens way beyond high school. Okay, the core knowledge approach, it is domain-based units. Okay, they are, again, 2nd grade, the War of 1812, westward expansion, water cycle, things like human body. So you have domain-based units. And you spend about 2 to 4 weeks on those units. And within those units, that is the mass that drives your instruction. And everything else is kind of implemented within those units. But the great thing about it is that, integration used to be so difficult because you were trying to take very, very unrelated concepts and put them together. And Core Knowledge has done that for you in the way their curriculum is intentionally designed and intentionally sequenced. I have a sequence book that I put back there if you're interested in looking at it. It gives you an outline of what the way the curriculum is designed. But it is through domain-based units. Because everything is integrated, because you're meeting and your children are not only having, an hour's worth of instruction in their reading class about the Constitution, they're also getting that a little bit in their history class. They're also hearing about it in music. They're also hearing about it in art. You're seeing it everywhere in the hallway. You have the sufficiency factor. So we know, if I were to ask you what is the #1 problem you have in your school today, so far as getting everything taught, what would your answer be? Time? Okay. And so we still have time issues. We still have time problem. It's not like, Tinkerbell came and sprinkled this magic fairy dust that gave us more hours in the day. But because everything is so integrated so effectively, you do have a better, effective, and efficient manner to teach things. The kids receive repeated exposure to vocabulary. The vocabulary is very intentional. It's posted, it's spoken about, it's referenced. I don't know who was in here for Carol's vocabulary instruction yesterday, but so many of the things that she was talking about is embedded within that core knowledge. It is the content vocabulary that the kids need to know. If you walk into a kindergarten class after they've had one of their classes, one of their domains, they won't tell you it's cold. They'll say, ooh, it's frigid today. Because they use that vocabulary. It's not just, hey, that's a great word, let's talk about it today and move on. It is embedded so that the kids get the opportunity to interact with it, to use it, to make it their own. Therefore, they internalize it, and it truly becomes a word that they walk away with. So you've got great Tier 2 vocabulary, you have awesome Tier 3 vocabulary, domain vocabulary, but it is repeated again and again, throughout the day. You're spending 2 to 4 weeks per domain, so you're having the opportunity to revisit vocabulary too during meaningful activities, read alouds. So they're walking away with that vocabulary. Okay, vocabulary is taught through context. Opportunity to cover both content and skills. So during our skills lesson, we'll be talking about the War of 1812. So again, you have just that natural integration that allows you to cover the content that the kids need, but also get the skills that they're required to have. All right, read alouds are huge. They have, we talk about reading aloud, like we heard in the general session this morning, and then interactive read alouds. And these are interactive read alouds where you sit down with the kids and you read these wonderful trade books and you talk to them about it. This program gives you a great opportunity to talk with kids. In our school, we have communities of learners. Our kids don't necessarily sit in rows, they sit in tables and they sit in groups because so much of this program, it is designed for children to talk about what they're learning. So it's not uncommon to walk around the school and you'll see kids involved in this great discussion about what it was like to be a Viking or what it means to go a Viking, and the kids are just so involved and they start with that trade book. It helps students become fluent readers. We have seen an unbelievable increase in kids wanting to learn because this is interesting. Give a boy in 2nd grade the Civil War and say it's okay to talk about conflict and things like that and battles and they're excited. So they love this content. Well, we know that. That's a lot of our battle. That's 50% of our battle, I would say, is just motivating kids to learn. And because the content is so rich, the kids want to learn. So therefore, not only is the program designed to create, better readers and fluent readers, but the interest is there from the very, very beginning.
Can I ask you a question?
Certainly.
So is this an alternative to like Common Core and Essential Standards, or is it?
That is a great question. At our school, core knowledge is the must. So what we do is we cover core knowledge. What we have found, because E.D. Hirsch and his group actually helped with the Common Core, so there's a much better alignment between core knowledge and the Common Core. Core knowledge and North Carolina state standards were like this. I mean, they were really, really hard to integrate. But we have found, even with the state standards, that if we taught core knowledge, everything else, even if it was not intentionally taught, the kids were, core knowledge is much more rigorous. Okay, so does that make sense? I'm going to show you an alignment between kind of the way Common Core and core knowledge aligns. But because the two of them, core knowledge, E.D. Hirsch and his company did have some say-so on the Common Core, it is much better aligned.
My question kind of relates to his. I teach music and art, and with the music curriculum, as it's outlined with grades that I teach, with core knowledge, many of the selections relate themselves to a certain body of content in core knowledge. Has there been any effort to update that in terms of really aligning with what is being taught with Common Core? Because some of those content areas have been moved from grade to grade. And I found in certain instances, what am I doing here? I can't use these certain selections because they have no relationship to what's actually being taught in social studies, whatever that main body of work is within the classroom. So,
because your focus is Common Core is basically what you're saying.
right, for our school.
Okay.
So I'm trying to align the core knowledge with that.
Right.
In my particular area, I'm having a lot of difficulty with that. So I'm wondering, has there been an update to some of those different things within, especially for music?
There has not been an update, but core knowledge has kind of relaxed their stance on moving things around. So if you see, we've had to do that in 7th and 8th grade, especially because of the science content. The North Carolina Essentials in 7th grade actually match the core knowledge 8th grade material. So they've moved things around a lot. So their only thing, they ask you to consider filters when you're moving things around. Is there any prerequisite knowledge that the kids need to know? So let's say you decide, and you guys are probably much more experts on the Common Core than I am because core knowledge is our focus. But if you have a group of 2nd graders and Common Core is saying something with the American Revolution, or something like that, you most certainly could take that American Revolution piece and move that to match the core knowledge, or vice versa if you needed to. Does that make sense, and does that answer your question?
I understand what you're saying with it, I guess. And the other part of my question would be, in terms of the materials that were originally used in making up the core knowledge, books and so forth, has that been revised at all? Because I found that some of the things I actually can't find.
Because they're out of print and things like that, yes. So far as revisions, no. There's still quite a few things that are out of print. We run into the same problem. The good news is that core knowledge knows that, and it's when we first started it 6 years ago. Core knowledge was I think a little bit more stringent about what you could do with their program. Now they recognize, because things are out of print, because we have state standards and things like that, they've kind of relaxed their hold a little bit more. So what they would tell you, or what they have told us in the past, is to find something comparable, if possible. Do you have like the music CDs and all of that kind of stuff?
Right, those I have. It was the other things, the books that actually become the base of many of the lessons and whatnot. But like you say, take a synthetic approach, use common sense.
Right. And I don't know what just happened here, sorry. That is...
Yeah, I don't want to delay the time.
That's okay. That is a huge thing, and that is something that we have dealt with as well. like considering those filters, just make sure that you're not jeopardizing prerequisite knowledge, that you're understanding that, what the kids need to know before that. So I do want to show you, and if y'all have seen this, let me know. I want to show you a video, if I can find it. Not Dale or Jr. This is Dan Willingham, and Dan Willingham is was a professor at the University of Virginia, and he is a proponent of core knowledge, and this video does an excellent job of kind of telling you why. Too dark? Anybody have any idea what they're talking about? guesses? The idea of not teaching reading strategies in isolation that was a real paradigm shift for our teachers. When our grammar school opened, the majority of us came from other schools, so we were used to using using Blast Off and all of those other books. I can't even remember what they're called now because we haven't done them in so long, to teach things in isolation. And core knowledge has allowed us to not do that and to see a tremendous increase in our reading comprehension scores anyway. So here's kind of a little bit of an alignment between core knowledge and the Common Core. Core knowledge, again, believes in academic excellence for all students, while Common Core, their push behind it is that all students, if you're using the Common Core, receive a high quality education. Core knowledge is content specific, while Common Core promotes a clear understanding of what students are expected to learn, which is much different than the North Carolina State Standards used to be. Core knowledge is coherent and the sequence is intentionally designed. Common Core, it says clearly define expectations for each grade level. So you're kind of losing the Martin Luther King effect in either way. If you think about it, when February rolls around, you learn about Martin Luther King in kindergarten, and then first grade, and then second grade, and then third grade. And because the standards or the guidelines are not intentional, we're teaching the same thing year after year after year. We're not ever expanding beyond the fact that he was an amazing civil rights leader and his accomplishment. Where in core knowledge, you get to the point where you're analyzing his most famous speeches and things like that. I know when I was at a traditional school years ago, it was the apple farm. We used to learn apples in kindergarten, we'd learn apples again in first grade, we'd learn apples again in second grade, or dinosaurs or whatever. That's gone with this. Everything is very intentionally pinpointed where you're going to teach it. In core knowledge, you have that cumulative spiraling curriculum, and Common Core has even recognized that, you know what, there's more to school than 180 days. That what you're doing in second grade should have to matter to what you're doing in third grade and fourth grade and on. So with a Common Core, we're building one year upon the next. Core knowledge, again, you're consistent from class to class. It doesn't matter where your child is, of course, minus 2 things proven to improve learning, is quality of the teacher and time. So, but you're no longer going into a classroom that is implementing core knowledge with fidelity, wondering, what is this teacher teaching? You have a very, very intentional list of standards to teach. Common Core has consistent expectations as well. Core knowledge not only builds meaningful connections, but they promote meaningful connections. There's been so much research with core knowledge to talk about how important it is for the kids to build these connections, that they will never walk away with true understanding if they can't learn how to make those connections from one thing to the next. Within a domain, across domains, across subject areas. And then, of course, Common Core also says that those connections are very important. Core knowledge is very, very vocabulary rich. For Common Core, it was a big, I don't know if y'all remember kind of the grumblings about talking about all this nonfiction text that Common Core was introducing. And it was we're going to lose all the classics and things like that because we're so focused on nonfiction. Well, nonfiction is really important, but that balance, as Common Core has promoted, is important. But core knowledge uses a lot of nonfiction read alouds as well as promotes the classics as well. And then Common Core, of course, we already spoke about. All right, so how do you maintain fidelity when you're implementing core knowledge? The curriculum map is very important. What we do at the beginning of the year is we map out our curriculum. We get together in grade teams, and the grade teams look at and consider that prerequisite knowledge. How am I going to teach? What is the sequence of my teaching going to be to make sure that when I get to the point where I'm teaching about Columbus, my kids understand why the Native Americans were so important. What those Native Americans, how those pilgrims would never have learned if the Native Americans did not teach them how to plant. So it's going back and it's thinking about, what do I have to teach first so that my kids can get a full and greater understanding of what comes next. From the curriculum map or the curriculum plan, you go to the domain maps. The domain maps are where you're looking at that specific domain that you're going to be spending 2 to 3 weeks in, and that's where you're developing your vocabulary in and your meaningful connections. And you're thinking about what prior knowledge the kids already know. What have they learned in previous grades? What are they going to learn? We're really, really good about front loading for our kids. We're really good about making those connections, but we also need to tell them why this is important. Where is this knowledge going to go for you? Where are you going to, here in 4th grade, where are you going to take that further on down the road? So that helps with that. Again, this is just kind of a reiteration. It's very intentionally sequenced. You've got the cross-curricular connections in place. These domain maps and this curriculum plan are great for new staff members. I can't tell you how many times I walked into a new school and it's like, okay, so what are we doing? And your fellow teachers, bless them, they're wonderful and they're trying to help, but they hand you all your basils and they're like, there you go. So this, when you have this curriculum plan or these domain maps, you have it very, very sequenced and very logically laid out for you. Instruction consistently reflects what's on the map. So as an administrator, when you're walking around, you have a really good understanding of where your teachers are because everything that they're doing in the classroom, you already know about based on the map. So you know exactly where they are. Read alouds are very, very important for the reasons that they impart that content knowledge. They model very, very formal and rich language. It's important that the kids are hearing the vocabulary at a higher level, not necessarily independent reading level, but at a higher level. We model and improve fluency when we're reading aloud, and we provide context for vocabulary acquisition regardless of what their independent reading level is. And then again, those reading strategies are no longer isolated. They're taught within the content. So all of those things are happening, all of those meaningful connections. It's like putting the bow on the package because the reading comprehension strategies are happening within there. That background knowledge is critical to comprehension. That video that we showed we showed that at our open house, because we've been doing this for 6 years. But, you know, parents, they read and they felt like they understood. Even some of us felt like we understood. But when we showed that video, it was like our aha moment. It was like, oh my gosh, that makes so much more sense. So we have seen and we have read that taking reading comprehensions and teaching them 25 times in isolation shows no greater impact in kids understanding those strategies than teaching them 6. So again, time. You teach what good readers know rather than what good readers do. Okay? All right, so just kind of in summary, and then I just kind of want to show you some pictures or like ask questions if you have any. You cement concepts with cross-curricular connections, increase vocabulary exposure. When you come into our school, and really when you go into any core knowledge school, you should see vocabulary everywhere. But on top of just seeing the vocabulary, you should see the vocabulary in action. You should hear it coming from the kids. You should hear it coming from the teachers. If you're walking into a 6th grade classroom and they're studying immigration, when you follow those kids to the music room, they're singing about immigration. Or they're doing art about immigration. In the library, they may be reading a book about immigration. There you have those multiple exposures. You need to allow students time to practice. We know that's just best practice. Making those cross-curricular connections. Core knowledge should be visible. You should be able to, when I'm giving tours around our school, we always like to say you should be able to walk into any part of our school and recognize, oh wow, you know, kindergarten studying Columbus, because you see Columbus and Columbus's related vocabulary words all in the kindergarten wing. And then when you go to 1st grade, you see that they're studying the history of the earth, because everything you see is about the history of the earth. 2nd grade, you see that they're studying the Civil War. So it's very, very visible. There is no, I must be doing that. There is no guess about what's being taught. Showcase meaningful activities. We have found with core knowledge, as we have really considered how true we are implementing this, we have found that we had a lot of fluff in our activities. You know, they were really cute, kids loved them, but we don't know what they walked away with. They learned how to, you know, take a piece of paper and make something that looked like Abraham Lincoln. So when we really started to think about our fidelity of implementation, and we realized that, you know what, I gave more directions on how to do this activity than I really did talking to the kids about what this activity was about. It has eliminated a lot of just meaningless fun things. Now, I'm not saying we don't have fun, but it has really challenged us to make sure that this is an activity that my kids are going to walk away with, and they're going to understand ants as a social insect, and you know, with 3 body parts and all the parts of an ant, rather than, you know, making a comic picture of an ant or something like that. So our activities have become much more meaningful. So I just kind of wanted to show you some pictures of some things that, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot this. All right. Core knowledge teachers should have mastery of subject matter. And that has come, I don't think that I will ever know enough to teach core knowledge. But the neat thing about it is that you want to learn more. I was never a history buff. In fact, I hated history. My husband loves history, so we would sit down and he would want to put on the History Channel or something like that, and I'm like, oh, you know, I'll go do laundry. But now it's like, wait a minute, that's the hanging tombs over the Yangtze, you know? And my husband's like, oh my word. So you have this mastery of subject matter, but you become this learner that you want your kids to become. You become this person who just wants to learn more and wants to keep learning. Okay, you have high expectations, of course. You know, we know that our expectations have a lot to do with our kids' performance. We definitely want to use assessment to inform instruction, and that is very, very much promoted through core knowledge. We use scaffolding and feedback to meet the needs of individuals and afford the students opportunity for practice and the opportunity to apply their knowledge. So it's not only what you know, it's how you use what you know. So you're definitely thinking about that application piece rather than just, you know, getting to that basic level. Okay? Any questions or? Okay, well, if y'all are interested, you can hang around. I'll show you some pictures of kind of what our halls look like. This is my email address. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to respond. I mean, I'm sure y'all know as much as well.
Cathy,
Yes.
if it wasn't realistic to do a whole school change in something like core knowledge, what aspects of core knowledge do you think would be extendable as an add-on?
In the whole school or just in one classroom?
School-wide?
I would start, and please, y'all, you know, you do this as well, so you pipe up if you disagree. To me, I would start with the history component. I really would, because the history is so rich, and it's that piece, the history or the science. Now, the science is really good, but science tends to be something that we need to supplement a little more. You know, we have to take it a little bit further. We didn't in the beginning, but now, you know, we're realizing that as our kids come up, they're ready for more. So science, if you want to start with something small, start with science, because history is much bigger. But history, I think that's kind of what got us hooked, was the history. Don't you agree, Pam? That it was just, and you can walk around the building with history and you can see these little clusters of teachers gathered because they're like, did you know that Robert E. Lee, and you know what I mean? We're having discussions about content that we never used to have. You know, so that's where I would start, because it's high interest for your teachers, it's high interest for the kids, and it really is the history and the science, and that's kind of what drives this curriculum. So, you're welcome. All right, so this is just kind of, you know, what our school looks like. I kind of want to show you. I'm at that age where this is too close and this is too far, if you know what I mean. These are just some things that our kids are doing. They were studying astronomy in first grade, and this teacher had them all creating their own constellation. We have a lot of guest speakers come into our school. I'm sure y'all do too. Our parents are amazing, and this is another way to get great parent support, because your parents are experts on some things. And when you're studying things and you let the parents know, we always send home like a little, I know that's really dark, but I thought you could see them better. We always send home like a little list at the beginning of the year, kind of like a spreadsheet of these are the domains that we're going to be covering, with a little note that says, if you have any area of expertise in any of these areas, you know, please let us know. So we've had parents come in, and I had a parent last year who was actually from Peru, and when we were studying South America, now this is a woman that I would never have thought she would have come in, but because she was so, as she should be, so interested in sharing her culture with the rest of the kids, she came in and she added a lot to our discussion on South America. So, you know, it becomes a very intentional purpose for your parents to come in. You know how you have those parents who want to help but they don't necessarily know. So this was one of our American Revolution experts here. Obviously, he was one of the people that goes around to all these things. So this is kind of what our hallways look like. We have, you know, core knowledge is everywhere. It is very visible. You know, this is second grade. This is inside the classroom. So there's no guess about what's going on. And it's time consuming, it really is. I mean, it's our teachers spend a lot of time on this kind of stuff, but the kids love it, and it really helps promote excitement. We had fifth graders when we were teaching the Civil War, and we had the Civil War outside our classroom. We had fifth graders come down and say, can we talk to your kids about the Civil War? Because we learned about that too. So, you know, again, you're setting that stage for this is what you're going to be doing when you move to fifth grade kind of thing. Here are the constellations they made. So So just, just kind of some examples. I'm sure y'all have this kind of stuff too. Our fire inspector does not like us very much. Here's another parent who adopted a child from China, and they were studying about Chinese New Year. So she came in and she did this whole unbelievable Chinese New Year party for the kids. She made that cake, isn't that cute? So anyway, this is how it's integrated in one of our music classes. That was Chinese New Year. Oh no, I'm sorry, this is geology. This was 4th grade, and they made cookies to look like the layers of the earth. So I mean, the only thing holding you back is you just haven't thought about it yet. And each year we've seen it grow, haven't we, Pam? That, we didn't start out this way. Each year, though, we've seen it grow. This is 3rd grade when they study human body. But, this was one of our parents made this when 3rd grade was studying the Vikings, and they had a whole Viking race on it. And we did not have this, we have good parents, but we did not have this parental support in the beginning. They have become much more involved because it's so much more intentional. This is 1st grade when they were studying history of the earth. And that was really neat because 1st grade and 4th grade were studying that at the same time. So anyway, these are lap books. Y'all do lap books. Those are like the new rage now. They're everywhere in our school. Writing ties in really, really well with this. The kids wrote in 2nd grade a persuasive letter as Clara Barton, asking for supplies. So anyway, feel free to come back here and look through the books. I'll be happy to answer any questions, but thank you. Y'all have a great day.